Who is this lady in the shimmering evening dress? What is she thinking? What lies below the glittering surface of this painting with its strange and intense atmosphere? What is it that she gazes at so intently across the empty space of the canvas, something that we cannot see? This enigmatic portrait of a lady was painted by Portuguese artist Laura Sauvinet in 1892, when she was 19 years old. Laura Sauvinet was born in Lisbon in 1873. She was a pupil of the leading Portuguese artist of the day, José Malloa. She was a favourite student of his, and in 1888 he painted a portrait of her that has become one of his best-known and most celebrated works. In 1892 she married and became Laura Sauvinet Bandeira, although it seems she never signed her work with her married name. As in other European countries in the 19th century, the visual arts were a common part of an upper-middle-class Portuguese woman's education. Girls received training, generally from established artists acting as private tutors, in the accepted feminine accomplishments of drawing and painting, usually in watercolour. However, women artists in Portugal, if their economic and family circumstances made it possible, were able to study art formally from an earlier date than was the case in many other European countries. Both of the fine arts academies in Portugal, the National Academy of Fine Arts in Lisbon and the Fine Arts Academy of Porto, were officially open to women after their statutes were reformed in 1881 to state that students of both sexes were eligible for admission. The first female students entered these institutions in 1882. In comparison, the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris was not open to women until 1897. The Danish Academy of Fine Arts in Copenhagen had no women's school until 1888, and the Vienna Academy excluded women until 1920, the same year in which the Fine Arts Academy in Munich, which had shut out women in 1839, finally let them in again. Despite the availability of formal artistic training in late 19th century Portugal, the number of aspiring female artists able to take advantage of it was very limited, and it was more typical for women to do as Laura Sauvinet did, and take private lessons from a professional artist, in her case the notable and successful José Malloa. Beyond the question of their training, women artists such as Sauvinet were able to become members of art societies, including the National Society of Fine Arts after its creation in 1901, and to practice as artists and to exhibit, although in Portugal, as elsewhere, there was often social prejudice against women who achieved prominence in activities such as art, rather than restricting themselves to the realm of home and family. Portuguese women artists' status was always amateur, until the first women began to develop professional artistic careers from the 1920s. This photograph, from circa 1895, shows Aurelia de Souza and her sister Sophia, who were both artists. Both women studied privately and at the Academy of Fine Arts in Porto, and then in Paris at the Académie Julian, and went on to successful careers. Aurelia is indeed one of the most important figures in Portuguese 20th century art. At the exhibition of the National Society of Fine Arts in 1902, its catalogue cover adorned by a picture of a woman artist, Laura Sauvinet was one of 17 women among the 68 exhibitors, showing 2 portraits. Although her name is little known today, she did achieve considerable success. This article from 1903 describes her as a painter of great merit, whose work shows, in addition to technical knowledge of the secrets of art, a great idealism and poetry. She was a regular and prize-winning exhibitor with the Artists' Guild and its successor, the National Society of Fine Arts, from the 1890s to the 1940s, and her work formed part of the Portuguese fine arts display at the Paris Exposition of 1900. She died in 1954. This picture is now in the collection of the José Malloa Museum at Caldas da Rainha in Portugal. The sitter is clearly a member of Lisbon's wealthy social elite. She is identified as a daughter of General Augusto Palmeira, although her own name is not given. The title of the work is simply Retrato de Senhora, Portrait of a Lady. The influence of Malloa can be seen in the brushwork, above all in the treatment of fabric, and in such details as the depiction of the sitter's hands. A side-by-side comparison of Sauvinet's painting with Malloa's The Bride from 1888 clearly shows the similarities of composition and technique. Indeed, Malloa's painting almost certainly depicts the same sitter, and may well have served as the direct inspiration for Sauvinet's painting of this lady 4 years later. But the comparison also demonstrates the very different mood of the two pictures. Sauvinet's portrait has an engrossing atmosphere of self-contained psychological intensity that is all its own. Part of the compelling character of this picture comes from the way in which the informal and the formal coexist within it. The style of painting of the background and the clothing is informal, almost sketch-like. The impression is of rapid brushwork, with a combination of broad, irregular strokes defining significant form, followed by flurries of finer brushwork that flicker restlessly across the surface. Yet the figure itself, static and clearly outlined, with careful modelling of forms and contours, has a striking formality, with the clear-cut profile of the face standing out like a study for a portrait medallion. The lady is depicted 3/4 length and sitting with her left side towards us. She is in a static, seated posture, but it is not a position of repose. Her presence is dynamic and restless. The strong modelling of her face is emphasized by the simplicity of the way her hair is styled, caught up and pinned at the back and allowed to form curls at the front in the fashionable style of the time. Her face is almost, but not quite, in true profile, as her head is turned slightly towards us. This creates a powerful sense of watchfulness in the sitter, as if she is scrutinizing something beyond our field of vision with a steady, unblinking gaze. Her rather severe profile and unsmiling demeanour contribute to the introspective and serious atmosphere of the portrait. She is at a social event of some kind in the evening, a dance, a reception, a musical performance. She wears a very fashionable dress of silver-grey silk, perhaps similar to this Worth evening gown from the very year in which the picture was painted, 1892. Sleeve lengths were varied in 1890's evening gowns. In this case, the sleeves are reduced to mere frills, ornamented with bows on top of the shoulders, revealing the bare left arm that is such an important element in the picture's composition. All the frills, running from waist to collar, painted with a shimmering display of bravura brushstrokes, are not part of the dress itself, but of a lace fichu that the lady is wearing over the front of her bodice. The metallic gleam of dress and fichu, and the way they cover and conceal the front of her body, give the appearance almost of armour, as if the lady has chosen to protect herself by wearing a cuirass and gorget. In her right hand she holds an elaborate evening fan, finished in the same silver-grey as her gown. With the fingers of her left hand she toys idly or thoughtfully with the feathers with which it is mounted. This was a popular style in evening fans throughout the later 19th century. It is impossible to see precisely what type of furniture she is sitting on. It may be a chair or one end of a sofa. It is covered with silvery white fur with dark spots. This does not seem to be upholstery, and may be a fur cover placed over the seat, but I think it is more likely to be something that this lady was wearing over her evening dress, a fur cape or wrap. Its presence suggests that she has just arrived, has thrown the fur off her shoulders and sat down, and is taking stock of the place and the people. The mood of psychological intensity in this portrait is strengthened by the tight cropping of the figure and by the composition, which is powerfully focused and carefully balanced. This is the horizontal centre line of the painting, which runs through the upper part of the raised hand and the top of the shoulder. The point of the elbow, marking the lowest point of the powerful shape formed by her arm, is the same distance below the centre line as the top of her head is above it. The vertical centre line of the painting runs through her elbow, the tip of her nose, and the front curls of her hair, giving extra prominence to her profile. Her head is wholly in the right upper quadrant of the picture, with those forms balanced diagonally by her forearm, hands, and fan in the lower left quadrant, emphasizing the slight backwards angle of her body, increasing the sense of detachment and self-containment which she possesses. Her face, upper body, and arm can be contained within a square, rotated through 45 degrees and set exactly in the centre of the picture. A square closed on 3 sides by the forms of her head and body, but unenclosed on the upper left, where the open space of the upper part of the canvas is penetrated by the line of her gaze. That detached, self-contained atmosphere is further increased by the painterly qualities of the portrait. The ground for the painting, most visible towards the edges of the canvas, is a pale ochre, which creates an overall golden tone, bringing extra depth to the silver, grey, and white tones that form most of the surface of the picture. The elements of the background, made up from flickering brushstrokes in light tones, offering little contrast or clear definition, are restless and immaterial compared to the clearly defined and strongly modelled forms of the sitter's head and arm, which emerge strongly against the background, further strengthening the impression of detachment that surrounds the sitter and sets her apart from her surroundings. This is a portrait of an individual, a particular woman, but it is also a capturing of a specific moment embedded in the social life of the time. It represents the meeting of 2 worlds, the public life of a social event with the private interior life of the individual participating in that event. Many late 19th century portraits show their subjects surrounded by the material circumstances of their lives, placed in settings and accompanied by items that represent their identity. But Sauvigne's subject is set against a background that lacks specific reference of any kind. Even the detailed reading that can be made of her costume is generic to her class and era, rather than particular to her. Yet her face, her expression, and the atmosphere that hangs about her create a powerful sense of her individuality, but one that lies below the surface of the painting and within it. The true subject of the picture is the interior self, presented here as more real than the exterior world that surrounds it. Laura Sauvinet was an artist, but the work of art most associated with her is this one, Malowa's portrait, not a picture by her, but a picture of her. When she is spoken of at all, it is as Malowa's student. When she is seen, it is through Malowa's eyes, preserved in paint, forever his pupil, forever 14 years old. As the woman she became, a painter in her own right, with a life and career of her own, she is, like so many women artists, almost invisible to history. Malowa's 1888 portrait is a masterpiece, and both painter and sitter were justly proud of it. But it is a shame that Laura Sauvinet is not better known for her own work and on her own terms. Sauvigner's portrait of a lady, like Malowa's painting of Sauvignet herself, is part of the collection of the José Malowa Museum, which is devoted to her teacher. It deserves to be better known, as does its creator. This extraordinary portrait, painted at the very beginning of her career, shows with compelling clarity just what a remarkable painter Laura Sauvinet was.